check. Check, check, check. Chickadee check, check, check. Chickadee check, check, check. Chickadee check. Check. Woo! Oh yeah, okay. Now I see what I was doing. Okay, that can be muted too. Woo! Okay. Intro. I wonder if I'm transmission. I believe that we're good to go. Sounds like we are. Oh.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello out there.
Hello, hello, hello.
Am I going the right ones? Yep.
Shalom.
Shalom, shalom. Well, we're just going to get into it. Metal Dad's back here with Todd again.
And so
You came back from a journey. Tell us all about your journey, because I don't even have questions for you. I just want to hear what's going on.
It's been a journey. I'm on a spiritual journey my whole life. But really, I'd like to start with some things. I took some notes, liberty of bringing in notes and stuff that I was talking about. So on my recent adventure, I've gone off to Israel, and I was in Israel for basically the entire month of April, and just got back about a week and a half ago now. And I have deep connections to there through just friends and some family background. But I'm a Canadian citizen, right? I've never been there before. I have nothing to do officially. I'm not speaking on Israel's behalf. I'm just speaking as an observer. And one of the terms we use is what people call me is a wandering Jew, right?
Yeah.
Now, anti-Semitically, there's a story that there's a wandering Jew that spit on Jesus, and so he was cursed with immortality, but that's not what we mean, right? So, as a wandering Jew, I'm one of the guys that's always kind of walking around and keeping an ear to the ground for anti-Semitism. It's on the rise all over the place. Remember the pogroms in Russia. Remember the Holocaust. It's not fiction. A lot of the people in the Q movement, right? So different camouflage when we're walking around as a wandering Jew. We could look like we're conservative when we're not. I think I was just telling you I'm actually more of a classical liberal.
Yeah.
You
were saying that before we turned the microphone on.
But in all this, we don't exist, right? So I don't really exist that way. I'm just a retired soldier. Now, Israel, my first girlfriend was from Haifa. So when I was in Israel, I went to Haifa, and it's a really beautiful place. And her name was Sharon Kovacs, and she still lives, I believe, in Thornhill in Toronto, and married off and everything else. But we were in love from a young age, but we didn't get married because I'm a hybrid, right? I've always been this hybrid of Catholic and Jewish.
Yeah.
And I would not give up Jesus, and so I'm like almost more of a messianic kind of Jew. I follow the laws and all that kind of stuff, but I'm also born again in the fact that crucifixion to me is not fiction. The Holocaust is not fiction. The pogroms are not fiction. The story of the wandering Jew, and all the anti-Semitic rhetoric in Q, it's the same thing they use in Russia and all this kind of stuff. It always comes back. One of the things I wanted to be able to say is that, did I walk around Israel, right? Yeah, I did. I just walked around, met the people, the Muslim sections, everything else. There's about 9 million people there. Honest, loving people, really modern thinking and everything else. When you get to Jerusalem, it's a little bit more religious, but you got to remember at this time, we have Passover, Ramadan, and both Easters converging on each other, right? So there's always going to be this kind of tension. But there's a beauty there. There really is, right?
Yeah.
And in that world, in this world that we know right now, that we accept, that people are going through, it's one of the oldest civilizations. It's 5,022 years old and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
But then we look at truth and what's outside of the world. We know that just here in St. John, the Maliseet, the Woolstock Nation, has artifacts 45,000 years old. We know when I go to Nepal, there's statues there that are 15,000, 20,000 years old of Vishnu and stuff like that, right? So either way, just history has been written by the war winners and stuff. So, and there's a certain way the world works, right? So in this world that most people live in, it's what we call a 99% solution. So under Queen Elizabeth the First, right, MI6 was developed because they realized that the 99% solution with the FBI, the CIA, Mossad, everything else works, but there's kind of like a society that works behind that, right?
Yeah.
And that's like
the hidden hand.
Yeah, and that kind of takes care of things behind, right? And that's a world that I get to see, and let's just put it that way. And it's a world we're not really going to talk about, but it's a necessary world to kind of keep the things going. 'Cause people know, right? There's a lot of things governments know in that. And we were just talking about this, right? So we have to wake people up, right? We're waking people up to a whole different new concepts. I wanted to talk a bit about a covenant because people have to understand how it is when you have that part Jewish and what the covenant really is. And I mean, you have that through the Catholic as well, right?
Yeah.
But it's an oath of complete loyalty, right? After Moses descended from Mount Sinai, he built an altar and the people reacted and shouted together. All that the Lord has spoken, we will do faithfully. Exodus 24:7. But in Hebrew, we say, Nashi Nashvima. We will do and we will listen. This encapsulates the person of faith, especially the people that follow in Israel, right? First, we agree to the laws of our covenant, and only afterwards do we learn or wonder why. Because there's levels of initiation, right? It's not always for everybody to know why the everything, right? Why this, why that. You have to go through paths of initiation. Truth, and what is truth? That's questionable in itself, but truth,
Subject
right?
to fucking reality.
Yeah, so truth in itself, right, it is, you need a stable platform. You need to be very balanced in who you are, right? The New Agers are always talking about, hey, I want to be one with the universe, but you're not one with yourself yet, right?
Yeah.
So, truth is not for you to understand. It will come to you through time, right? People think they're free. I think I was talking about this with you here. So,
Well, you alluded to you wanted to speak something about freedom.
yeah, well, freedom in this sense too, right? Like talk about freedom and what is true freedom. And we'll hit this in one of the things I teach is that you think you're free just because you could eat meat, have guns, have your land and stuff, but then the train crashes, chemical spill has, and they move you over. So you're not really, now your life is destroyed. Right, you're going to be upset. You have everything else. So true freedom is the detachment of ego, the detachment of this world, right? Because you can't fix this world. No matter, a lot of people have tried it, right? So whether you're on the left or whether you're on the right, you can't fix things. Those people are usually broken, and they're trying to fix the world by attaching to these crazier ideas, and they think this will help fix themselves as well. We got to come back to a more kind of centrist kind of opinion, right? And a centrist view. So part of my history and some of the things I would like to talk about is first the real mensch, Bernard Barry Charles, right? So Barry Sherman, and Heine Sherman.
Okay.
So everybody's in the Jewish community second degree related to each other, right? So and he was a really good mensch, man. He built Appletex. It was a generic drug industry out of about $100,000 he had to start, and he built it out of his grandparents' garage or his uncle's garage, I think, on a loan.
Yeah.
And he brought really cheap drugs all to the world, Canada, right? So he died.
Okay.
You know, so I was praying in Israel for him. That was one of the people I was praying for, him and his wife, Honey.
Okay.
And that's just connected for that. And another dear person I'd like to talk about is Prime Minister, one of my favorite Prime Ministers in Israel, was Yitzhak Rabin. He was assassinated in 1995. But he was a guy that was actually bringing peace process. He was a guy that was going forward, and like JFK, he was killed, right?
Yeah.
So one of my favorite things is he said, we must think differently, look at things in a different way. Peace requires a world of new concepts, new definitions. Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, right? And he was a beautiful man, and just, I don't want to get into what he's saying, but just to give people, that's somebody I'd look up to and you'd want to read about. Another person that I like to read about or share with and ideas with is Franciscans, right? So the Franciscans and what we call a ghostly father, they'll say ascended master in the New Age, but we say ghostly fathers, right? So one of my ghostly fathers is Saint Francis of Assisi, right? So Saint Francis himself, a very thing. So we talked to that. And there's some really good books Catholics should read and some good links I wanted to share too. So Padre Pio is a good link. Padre Pio, and he's on YouTube. You could also look up a book I wanted to share. I'm ordering it for my my mother-in-law for Mother's Day, and it's called Left to Tell: Discovering God Amidst the Rwandan Holocaust, right? And that's by Immaculée Libaziga. Sorry, I'm never the best on the names. But that's Left to Tell. So these kind of books and stuff.
So many tongues, man. Don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
Somebody will correct us in the comment section. It'll be all
That's
right.
perfect,
That's
right?
what they do.
But if you want to read a really powerful book, Left to Tell, Finding God in the Rwandan Holocaust, right? And that's by Immaculate. And another book that's really inspired me for all these journeys, right? And I'll get to this because this all leads to me building that hospital in Nepal. And that started way back from Afghanistan, because before I went to Afghanistan, I read this book, and like people argue these books and they always knock down the authors. I don't care about that. The message of the book and 3 Cups of Tea, One Man's Mission to Promote Peace by Greg Martison and David Oliver. It's about a guy that basically he's a rock climber. He's in the Himalayas, part of, but more in Pakistan. And then he starts building schools for people there, right?
Okay.
So when I was in the Himalayas, the big thing I wanted to do is I wanted to build something for them to give back, and they said, well, we need a hospital. So I was like, and you look at business models, right? You look at resources. So one of the things is like, okay, well, I have Catholic roots and I have Jewish roots, so I've been looking for sponsorship, and I'm getting that too. So I have friends all the way out of the Franciscans coming out from Argentina and going all the way, and they're in Israel right now, but they'll be going to Nepal and helping there. And building these hospitals and stuff like that, right? And so I went out for Passover. I went out for a Passover lunch, right? So we have kosher food. Do you understand what kosher food is?
Now, I've never really I think it's just like pork free. Is it pork free?
Not necessarily just pork free. So it's in a way we kill the animal, right? So even halal food is better. I try to get Steph, even when we're in Walmart, to buy at least halal. So it's idea that we cut the animal's throat, right?
Yes.
And so, that's halal, but it's killed by hand, right? So it's not just slaughter. It's not just through the machines. It's not through that. So it's killed by hand. The next step is kosher. Is you should cut the animal open and inspect its organs too. Okay. So it's defunct organs and stuff. You're not going to use it for that, right? That's the idea. So it was these general health things. So where does this come from, right? And where does these health ideas come from? Well, the big discussion in Israel right now is on these laws and ordinances, and the big confusion where the riots are happening, the problems are, is the current guy is kind of like wants to rebuild the old system and the old Jericho and the old rules, and it's the religious right, and he's not. Look, I want to get the guy's history, right, because he did a lot of good for the country too. But him and Ehud Barak, that whole partisan part of this have to go, right? Like those are the guys I believe that got rid of Yitzhak Rabin, allegedly, right? I don't know anything, right? But there's family infighting. This is what I was saying.
There's a lot of
that's
coups
going
that
on.
happen.
Yeah, so that needs to change, right? And because I walk around, and the thing, like when I see in the Q posts and stuff like that really upsets me is that, like that Jason Q guy and stuff, they'll talk about how I was just there at Passover, man. We're not dipping baby's blood in the Passover bread, right? People are just people. This satanic stuff that's happened that everybody's putting on Israel is not a thing, right? Maybe there's satanic people there. Yeah, but again, it's like that whole, like that Kanye West and everything else. It's all the Jews, this, and like most of them are just dudes and women, right? Like they really are just normal people, man.
Here's what I want to say about what Kanye West said, because if you listen to what Kanye West said, all he said was that the people that were running Hollywood and in charge there were Jewish. Mm-hmm. That's all he said. Mm-hmm. He didn't say anything bad about the Jewish.
No, and we get this, right? So, but the reasonable thing is it's just because people take it to the next level, right?
Well, I'm trying to figure out where all these...
But that's what I mean. So then it comes and then you see the Q post, you see Jason Q or Charlie Freak, and they deny the Holocaust, for instance, right?
Oh, okay.
And that did happen, right? Just as much as the crucifixion happened.
Yeah.
Just as much as the Rwandan Holocaust happened. That's why I want to recommend that book, right?
Yeah,
the very recent one.
Oh, yeah.
The Armenian Holocaust under Turkey. A million Christians they crucified.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like and that was on Turkey, right? Like, so, and they never paid up for that. But see, they're always trying to bury this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so even the Franciscans have always been the fight against the Freemasons, because the Freemasons and their elite are the one that want to bury the truth and bury a lot of, like, they have a lot more of a cult But the Franciscans really want to teach people about the crucifixion, and they also want to teach about people one of the most powerful prayers that you have, whether it's any chant, and that's the Hail Mary.
Who were the Franciscans?
Yeah, Franciscan monks, the brothers, right? So
who are they? Because I haven't heard this one before.
Yeah, so in about the 16th century, the church was going through a lot of problems, right? So just as it is now, right?
Yeah.
And this happens, but the church has been here for thousands of years for a reason. It will get cleaned up. So it went through problems. So this young man was going to be born, and he couldn't be born. His mother was going to die in childbirth. So what happened is they got a knock on the door, and an old man opened the door and said he has to be born in the stable. And they're like, what? So they took him outside of the stable, and she gave birth to this Saint Francis of the stable, and he was born to a really rich lord.
Okay.
And he lived a party life. He homosexual, everything, right? Like party up, drank it up, party going, like he just was everything. He had money, right? He was just like into it. But then he had an awakening, and then he gave up his money and gave to the church. And then he had a vision in the church that he had to fix this church, right? So he's asked his dad for his wealth. He used the money that he got from his dad to fix that church. But his actual real mission was he fixed the whole church up, right? Because the whole Catholic Church, just like now, right, was falling down, right? This is cyclical like everything else, but it will be held back up again, right? Because the underlying message is truthful, right? There's just initiations. You got to remember, when we look at things and we judge things, we got to judge things with the balance, right? So this is bad about it, yeah, for sure. But what's good about it? They were the first people to start schools. They're the first people to start teaching the peasants, right? It was the Catholic Church and stuff, right? You can't. Everybody's always ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? And that's it. So these Franciscans have kept different true teachings, right? Now, on St. Patrick's Day in 2020, there was 33 cardinals arrested and about 250 more people arrested in the Vatican. That's all I'm going to say about that. And if you look at Italy's number at the beginning of COVID, there's about 5,000 deaths that happened there, right? There was a lot of cleanup that was happening inside the Catholic Church, right? So that had to happen too. But again, there's a compassion here. So we're talking about where information gets dripped out to the world as this great awakening or whatever you choose to call it.
You can't collapse the whole system. You got to collapse what's going on.
No, the Catholic prayer ladies, right? They're not going to die if they hear things like that, right? So the system is there, and there is an illusionary system that helps the world live, right? It helps it function.
Matrix.
It is,
so to say.
But it is needed. It is necessary, and most people are not ready for the full truth, right?
Yeah.
Not just that's also not their fault. It's their responsibility, which we could get into it.
That's
right?
what you. That was one of the big messages from just before you went to Israel.
Yes.
With Captain Jack.
It's not exactly not your fault, but now your responsibility to look at this, right?
Yeah,
so the human race has been under slavery for at least the last 6,000 years,
as far as we know.
Yeah. So. Right now,
and anybody that thinks that where's my camera again? Anybody that thinks that we haven't been,
no. So 6,000 years of slavery, right? And people are kind of shocked into a certain kind of a system right now. They're shocked into a certain belief, right? So to wake everybody up is going to take a while. So let's go back to the history, because if you talk to a Jewish person and everything else, it's always Egypt. It's always about Egypt. When we're in Egypt, when we left Egypt, everything left Egypt. It's like just yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? It really is, right? But when we left Egypt, we had all the same health issues, because the Egypt had fallen kind of like the States has fallen today, right? And everybody was fat and obese and had all these victim attitudes and stuff. So when they were taken out by Moses, they had, after 50 days after Passover, the laws were passed down, and then about 3 months later, there's this place called Mansah, I believe. And there, the water was bitter, and they complained about it, so the god at the time, as he forms the destroyer form, says, throw sticks in the water, this and that, but he was teaching them breathing exercises, yoga, everything else, and all this kind of healthy stuff, right? But he realized that people were kind of messed up for being under slavery for so long. That's why he walked them 40 years so the generations would die off. And the new generations, like our own children, right?
Yeah.
So in this great awakening, I think everybody's expecting things to happen like that, right? But you have to have patience, right? So as we open up here, we're going to open up, and as older generations die off and these new messages come in, we will come into this great awakening. But it's not just going to happen overnight. You know, there's no big Jasar coming. There's no big anything coming and stuff like that. There's no anything. So, you know, the world is not flat. It is round. That's a psyop, right? It started about 15 years ago, and it's by the CIA. And it's one of those black rocks. The world is 11 degrees. It's tilted for seasons, right? We have space people coming back now, right? The cordon is over. We've talked about this in Atlantis, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the Jewish Kabbalah and a lot of the system is just for us learning how to deal with the space people.
Yeah,
you see
the
what I mean?
Galactic Federation.
Yes,
But
it was ancient times,
we've been
right?
under quarantine for, what is it, 13,000 years, I believe?
Yes, so we're coming to
when
that
they
time.
purged the Earth of all of the giants and all that other shit that was going on here.
So did not CNN this year say there's a mothership in our system, in our galaxy, right?
Yeah.
So inside of this, right, that mothership has always had alliances with Israel, has always had alliances with the United States. It goes back. But at the same time, there's a lot of compassion, a lot of slow things. It has to happen. There has to be a slow awakening to what's going on.
You can't tell 8 billion people that everything was
No,
wrong and here's the
no.
truth.
And so there's two factions that were working here, right? And I was telling you earlier, so there's the one faction that wanted to like just remove 85% of the world.
Yeah.
I'm not on that faction, right? I'm not on that faction. That's the other faction. So I was on the faction that would say Yitzhak Rabin and Barry Sherman and stuff like that, and Jared Kushner and these sort of things. And we want to let the world live, right? And I was telling you too. So you're not really free. You just think you're free because you have a gun, you can eat, you can run. But the train crashes, you lose everything, right? You lose all your money. The economy collapses. You know, you end up in jail. But a truly free person could be in jail with 3 hots and cot and yet still be out of jail every day through meditation, through yoga, through prayer, everything else. That's true freedom.
Yeah.
So with what's coming, whether you're calling it a smart city or a, a freedom city, I think is what President Trump is calling it, but 15-minute cities, they're not as bad as you think, right?
Well, the convenience of a 15-minute city is, I understand that. My sister is living in Edmonton, and she tells me about how the convenience is great, which is true, because you shouldn't really have to travel hours in order to go get something, or you shouldn't have to wait in like a 30-minute traffic line in order to get something. So I understand the concept of the 15-minute city, and my stance has always been, I like the idea, but I don't like the people that are trying to put it into power.
And that's the issue, right?
I don't trust those yard apes.
And we've had that's that issue that we have. And those yard apes that were trying to put it in power were the yard apes that had the plan to get rid of 85% of humanity, right?
Yeah. And then
they're being put in their place, is what I'm saying. There's a lot of, so that 1% rule that happens behind the back, that started since Queen Elizabeth's time, MI6 and everything else, and there's just agencies, there's good people around the world, right?
Yeah.
None of that's official.
Well, you can't have absolute in anything.
No,
right?
and that takes care of these balances, right? So there's a cleanup. Everybody's been saying, "Oh, we're saving Israel for last," right? I'm telling you, Israel's good, full people. They're not killing kids. They're not drinking blood. They're not that. This is the old blood libel stuff.
I don't know who thinks that.
Before. Just some of the stuff I just want to reiterate.
Well, you just came back from
I
get different stories than I am, right?
Different. Well, you know, it's just. It's harsh sometimes, and it's probably some of us too, because there's not enough of us to educate. And one of the things I said, so with Jackson, my own stepson, right? Like I had an Israel shirt on, and he's like, "Oh, that's the Jew flag," and I'm just like, "Yeah." It kind of hurt for a sec, right? But it's not out of.
He doesn't know how to do.
He doesn't know how to explain it. Like, the Jew flag. Yeah, thanks. No, so everybody's like, "Oh, you just got given Israel, right?" And they have the Protocols of Zion, which is a conspiracy, the Balfour Agreement, which isn't really such a conspiracy, but the point is when the Jews weren't allowed to come to Canada, nobody else wanted them, so they didn't know where to put all these refugees at the time, right? So they gave them to the islands. They're like all these islands just outside of Israel. And they were given guns, and they had to go fight. They had to go win that country, right? Like, everything was won, and it was hard won, right? So now you have a country that's built on, that people were putting you in ovens. People have been blaming you. We got the pogroms, like just the wandering Jew story, right? So the lie of the community through Europe is that the wandering Jew is the guy who spit on Jesus and slapped him when he was carrying the cross. That's not true. So if you go to the Franciscans, they'll tell you the truth of the wandering Jew, and the truth is Satan.
Okay.
Right? So if you go back to, God has had many creations as far as we're concerned, right? The first spiritual human was Adam. Atom, actually.
Yeah.
And Atom was a gift. God would sit with him and talk with him and do everything else. But Adam, in his infinite wisdom and his power that he thought he was a beautiful, had lived forever, let's just say, as humans can be, was decided he didn't just eat from the tree of knowledge. He decided to mess with AI, God's creation, mRNA vaccines, mess with the DNA chain, all that kind of stuff, right? That's the symbolism of the story. So God was very upset with him, and he actually banished him what we call a long exile. So he's known as the wandering Jew. So he's exiled, but he himself will one day find Christ, and through that will be redeemed, and that's when the earth will move to the new age, right? Because we'll realize that we can't fix this creation, right? I can't fix this world through my political beliefs, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm a capitalist,
that's very naive.
If I'm a capitalist, it's not going to work because there's a wealth gap, right? If
Yeah.
I'm a socialist, then that's the government against the people.
Yeah.
You can't have small. If you're a communist, right, it's control the means of protection by any means possible, but it doesn't work because it doesn't account for human greed, right?
Yeah.
So what I talk about is the line of divine law, right? And the real purpose of government can be found in the preamble of the U.S. Constitution. And this is just beautiful, right? Because this was inspired. They weren't going to do this. Somebody like shouted out from the balcony, "Hey,
yeah.
you got to do this," and they did it, right? Like there was like an angelically inspired this, or from above, right? We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and the posterity to ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States. Right? And so they established the Constitution and everything else, and they rang that bell in Philadelphia, right?
Yeah.
But they didn't follow any of the laws, anything else. They just went all against God's laws and all that kind of stuff. And 50 years later, which happens, because at 50 years, it's the Jubilee, the Liberty Bell cracked, and it's never rang since. So in 1826, the United States became Babylon.
Okay.
And that's when the deep state really kind of took over from it, right?
Yeah.
So when we look at the Empire of England, when it was successful in the 15th century, right, with the MI6 starting and everything else, they were Puritans. They actually believed in God. They had these values. They followed these laws and rules in their expansion. Again, these societies crumble on themselves. Why? Because they become almost too pagan, too much things. And it's not that paganism, because Yahweh and the original Yahwehism of God, our own God, was paganism, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But about at the time of Moses and the time prior to this, to understand that, it cut creating problems within society, because society needs more of that unification, right? So he's like, okay, just come to me.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's one thing I like the Sikhs, right? So we have, say, the Holy Spirit, which is actually feminine, it's not masculine. But the Sikhs have the word Satnam, right? Which is all the goddesses, the 33 million gods put together, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so in Israel, very interesting. So here, I think, in Canada, between the First Nations, there's 1,000 words for snow, right? In Israel, there's one, in Hebrew, I think the word for snow is shlek, something shlek like that. But that's snow, ice, hail, everything. Only one word for everything white. There's over 1,000 names of God, which is really interesting, right? So we say the name Hashem. So if you ever hear me saying Hashem, it's just kind of like, because he has different sacred names. So just like in the Sweat Lodge here, right? We don't say all the creator songs or sing certain songs unless we're in ceremony in the spirit, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to invoke God's name all the time. So one of the things we say is, we call him in Hebrew, he's the Aleph, the Aleph, right? The Hebrew letters, the first. But it also means he's so bright that he shines. That's why he doesn't appear, because if he shines,
Yeah.
he destroys you. A really good image of this is Gods of Egypt. I saw it on Tubi.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they had a really good. Hathor takes up everything. It's the story of redemption again, the same story, right? Because there's been thousands of Krishnas, there's been thousands of Buddhas, there's been thousands of Shivas, there's been thousands of Jesus, there's been thousands of Moses, there's been thousands of prophets, there's been and everything else, but there's only one God. Even in indigenous, we talk about this. It's the Father Spirit, right? So you have the great Father Spirit that never incarnates in this because the light, the power of himself would just destroy everything, right? Like it just doesn't. But what happens though is the Shakti or the Satnam or the Holy Spirit creates with what? Always the sun, right? So Steph's mom gets it because in yoga we teach Ganesha, which is, the goddess created her son, Ganesha, right, out of her own. Again, in the first immaculate conception is your root chakra. So it's all set up for you. It's all messages and symbolism. So you've been to my house and you see I have all the statues and stuff. But that's not because I bow to idols. That's because those are all metaphorical symbols, right? So if I pull out this cross right now, it's a metaphor and a symbol to you. It means so many things. It's not just two sticks going together, right? So everything else is metaphorical symbols and how we teach ourselves.
Reminders.
So I've been talking about divine law and going back, right? Now, divine law, people say, well, this is very harsh, right? So I say, that's understandable, but you got to look at what people have added to things, right? And one of my favorite poets is, poets, but also a Sufi is Rumi, right? So 13th century Sufi from Persia. And he said, the heart of the law never changes, but the judgment and punishments over time should, right? And that's as our humanity grows, right? Because adultery in the old day, you're killed, right? Like it's like, we're dead, bang. We're not going to do that now, obviously, for obvious reasons, right? But adultery does affect the life of this, right? So it should be something
that affects the nuclear family, which is what
and it brings up the families and all this kind of stuff, right?
Forward.
It's that. One of my own journey, and really what I've come to it out of the mountains and even just recently, is that kindness is the way to go forward. So to find your path, the first thing you have to do is learn how to be kind. Be kind to people, right? So I've made a lot of sins, just like St. Francis, let me tell you. I've done pretty much about everything. But when I started being kind and learning to serve others, my life started changing. Being generous and charity to others, that's another first step, right?
Yes. I do apologize. I am just trying to produce
No, it's fine. So kindness and charity, these are the big ones. And also chastity, but I don't mean the prudeness, right? I don't want people covered up in burqas and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I was talking to Steph about this today. I said, I can look at my friend's wife's ass and I can say, hey, she's got a nice ass, but then that's done. That's it. I don't lust about it. I don't covet it. I don't want it, right?
You can acknowledge the presence of something.
The thing is when people try to become too pure and I see they have no sin in front of me, those people always worry me. Because they have something in the background that's probably stranger.
I just saw something on this, and there has been a study, I guess, that links a lot of, especially like overly Christian women. Eventually, they end up just destroying their marriage because they're so pent up from all of the restrictions and all of the rules that they just, at some point, midlife crisis happens. I can say that's almost like something that happened with my ex-wife.
Yes.
Just all of a sudden, they're just like, I didn't get to live my 20s.
Boom.
And off into the winds they go, and you're just like, what the fuck was that?
It's a breakdown, right?
Right? Yeah.
So, really interesting. So I love Christ. I love Buddha, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a blend of both of them. So when Buddha was trying to attain his enlightenment, one of my favorite stories, he was sitting in Shakyamuni. There's been thousands of Buddhas, right?
Yeah.
So Shakyamuni Buddha was sitting by the river, and one of the things he remembers saying is that there was a gondola going down the river, and the guy was playing the guitar, and he said, if the strings are too tight, it will snap, and if it's too loose, it won't play. And it was after this point he'd been doing sadhana for 7 years. He'd been starving himself, he'd been doing everything else, and he didn't get any closer to God, because that's not really, you could do thousands of that. If you haven't opened your heart to love, you will never get, you could do 1,000 pilgrimages, it won't do anything for you, right? Again, it's about that middle road, that path road, right? also with Jesus, right? So when I was telling you this before, he's also the morning star of Lucifer. Not that he's actually the devil, but what he did, right, is when he went to the garden is the first mystery. He laid down and he absorbed the sins. So he had to absorb the sins for everybody, because when he died in the actual doctrine, he went to hell for 3 days. And he had to conquer what's called the seven, they say it's the seven wraths. But in Sanskrit, we call it the seven arrays, which means the seven sheaths, right? There's 7 sheaths to the human aura. And it's all these different questions. The sheath of the intellect, the sheath of everything else. And that's the first person you talk to is Mary Magdalene, right? It's amazing. One of the things I like to say, because he doesn't get enough credit for this. So hold on, this one I'm going to give this. Okay, so this is a story that I got from the Tibetan gospel when I was over in Nepal, right? And they have stories on Jesus too. They call him Isa over there. And what had happened is that a woman was trying to get to the front of the line, and nobody would let her, right? She was an old woman. So Jesus said this, and I thought it shows you this is the stuff that they don't have in the Patriarchy Bible, right?
Yeah.
But you could find this in the teaching, especially with the Franciscans. So it says, reverence all women, Mother of the universe, for in her lies the truth of all creation. She is the foundation of all that is good and beautiful. She is the source of life and death. Upon her depends the existence of man, because she is the sustenance of his labors. She gives birth to you in agony. She nurtures your growth. Bless her, honor her, defend her. Love your wife and honor them, because tomorrow they shall be mothers and later progenitors of the humanity. Their love enables man, soothes the embittered heart, and tames the beast. Wife and mother, they are the adornment of the universe. As light divides itself from darkness, so does women possess the gift to divide man from good intent and the thought of evil. Your best thoughts must belong to women. Gather from them your moral strength, which you must possess to sustain your near ones. Do not humiliate her, for there you will humiliate yourselves. All which you do to the mother, to the wife, to the widow, you do also for the Holy Spirit. Right? Very powerful. Right?
Yes.
It just shows you that respect, right? In a society, so a lot of people are like, oh, well, you're this way and you want women this way. I'm like, no, I respect women. And there's different, so even in the path of yoga, right, we look at different phases in a woman's life. So there's the maiden phase, and our daughters are in that phase, right? They're in the maiden phase, and they're just crazy at that kind of age, right?
Yeah.
And then it comes to the mother's phase, right, which is a very beautiful phase, right? But each phase is very neat.
Mother, maiden, and crone.
In crone, right?
Crone.
I know they never like the name crone, but the crone is wisdom, right? Almost all my teachers have been women, actually, through my life.
Well, you need to
very interesting. You know, and it's just so it's these different stages. But these, like, all of us get here through a woman, right?
Yeah.
And all of this. So, just like Moses, so he passed the laws, he was the lawgiver, he was all that kind of stuff. But he did not part the Red Sea. That was his sister Miriam.
Okay.
She had the powers, right? She had the more communion, right? They're called Grail Maidens and stuff, but people don't like that part of the story because it doesn't fit into that patriarchy, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of what has to happen has to balance. But this has happened time and time again. So why are the Jewish people so hated, right? Well, it's because they follow Shiva and Enki, right? And the other guys are in Lil. It has to do with Egypt and Akhenaten and all that kind of stuff. It just going back. Why does that happen? Well, about 40,000 years ago, Shiva's wife, they burnt on a fire, and he kind of snapped, and he killed everybody at that party. But then they brought them back to life. But Shiva and his followers were cursed that they would never be respected on this planet. So this comes through here, right? So this comes through, and this is really where this kind of hatred comes from. If you want to get to the history of it.
Lay it on me.
Now, when I was when I was in Israel, I met different people. So I met this guy from Chicago, very good. And I won't get into names, but we were very interested in talking, right? Because they say Yahshua, right? So if you get into the Ethiopian, and that's where their roots come from. Our prayer is, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, right? Yeah. Their prayer is, Our Father, whose name is set apart among others. right? It's different. See, there's all these different things here, but it's like a different story, right? It doesn't mean that the words are less or not, or the power. But to them and to the brothers in the States and everybody else, it's like, who's the line of Shoal, right? So where did this line start from? And in my own research and things that I've shared with them, which he thought was phenomenal, I'm like, yeah, it comes from India, right? Because it was India, and we got to go to the first Immaculate Conception, not Jesus, right? As I said, there's been thousands of these saviors, right?
Yeah.
That in our own history, just in our own history here, like recent somewhat history, is Noah, right? So Noah, who's Noah? Noah's the son of Lamech. Lamech was a herder, right? And he was dark. He's like Ethiopian dark. And he comes all the way back from India and all that kind of stuff from the time there, and they come back and forth. In the Indian story, Lamech's name would be called Brihaspataye, right? Both had 9 wives and different things out. So Lamech had his newest wife, and I forget her name. I'm sorry about that, but she was only 13, right? And he was an older man at that time. He said, I'll be back in a couple of years, right? He walked off, and I think it was 18 months, maybe 20 months later, he had come back. And now there's a baby there with blue eyes and somewhat light skin, right? And he's going to kill everybody, obviously, right? So he's like, I'm going to kill this guy, I'm going to kill it. It's just, I'm going to kill. But no. They all swore, right? No, nothing happened. And he's like, okay, well, I got to go see my father. And who's his father? His father is Methuselah, right? And what's Methuselah say? He says, oh, I don't know. Let's go see my father, who is Enoch, who's 7th in the line from Jared, right?
Yeah.
And like, it's all historically put out from when the first spiritual human was created. The first spiritual human was created, which was Atom, right? And there's been other creations prior to that, but let's not.
That's aliens and
different things too,
yeah.
right? And different breeds and different stuff, right?
Mining,
but this is
gold.
Adam, right? And Adam's in that they live. Adam's still technically the wandering Jew who's wandering now, right? Who's also Shiva in the Himalayas and all that stuff. But that's for different people to understand, right? So like initiations have to go up through certain levels, right? But it's all connected. In Nepal they call me son of the wind. Same thing in India. They think my relationship, because to me they consider me like Hanuman, Monkey Man.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny, because when I work with the Sikhs, they call me Rafiki, right? And then I work with I'm the wandering Jew, and I'm working in the Middle East, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, there's only one truth, right? And that's why we wear that hat, because we respect the one God, Hashem, Allah, Sada, Shiva, the one great spirit. Father God, right?
Yeah.
So we wear a hat, we understand that, right? But religion's just a coat, right? And it's just a way up the mountain, right? The truth is all the same under the hat on the summit of the mountain.
Yeah.
We should not kill each other for these religions. So in society itself, behind that system, every group has elders, right? So, the German people have elders, the Jewish people have elders, the African people have elders, Chinese elders, the Asian elders, the Indian elders, and stuff like that, right? You don't know about these people, right? But they actually do have your best interests in, right? They have to manage things. Not only on this level, there's different worlds that you don't understand. Inner Earth, the Earth's not hollow, but there's tubes that go right around, and there's different civilizations in there that have to be not just off-world too, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of what's coming over the years, this all has to be negotiated. So these elders work through this. So the common fallacy is that when Trump went to China subdued themselves to Donald Trump, and he won. But that's not what happened. He handed power to China, right? So the Chinese elders are in power. That doesn't mean the States is going to fall apart and everything else.
Yeah.
This is all just a facade.
Yeah.
To help people live. We hold space for people to live. And I told you there's that 1%, and that kind of runs the world in behind. It's a 1 of 1%. It's very small, right? Because most people are just given a life to live, right? Because nobody's here to impede on people's free will.
The Earth is the great library and the great.
It's a very good library, right? So the elders of the planet want everybody to live together. So it's China's turn.
Yeah.
They're going to run the place 300 years, and they're going to do it their way.
Yeah.
And it also has to do with angels, because every country has an angel. So as we switch from the angels that we're watching over America and the United Kingdom, as this kind of closes for the chapters of the last 300 years. It's going to move over to China for 300 years, and then after that, it goes to the African elders for 300 years, right? And then, like Wakanda, it's...
Yeah.
That's not an illusion, right? There's things like that, elder cities, you know, the Gobi Desert, there's an ethereal city in the Gobi Desert where Saint Germain is, right? Saint Germain is the entity that we suspect that came and helped draft the Constitution.
Okay.
Right? Not only that, and you know, it changed it around. So there's a lot of things happening right now. So with the rise of BRICS too, and the dollar and everything else, in Israel, you're going to see Bibi go away and the kind of rise of this right. They're just trying to take over everything, make themselves kings. I believe Benny Gantz is going to get in there. It's going to be much more liberal. Right? They got to go back to the Yitzhak Rabin policy, right? Otherwise, it's going to be destroyed. Nobody wants a war, right? That's the thing. It's like when everybody's shouting, oh, my God this, my God that. My God loves everybody equally, right?
Yeah, we have a war now. Everything's...
No, that's it, right? And that's the whole point of trying to stop things. To stop that war.
Don't mind me, I'm just going to check this.
Yeah. But,
bugging me.
Haifa, man. If I would move anywhere in Israel, Haifa, this is like...
Where's
that? Beautiful city. So it's a seacoast, and it was formed by Templars and Mysore Indian cavalry. It's actually one of the only places in the world where cavalry conquered a fortification, right, and rebuilt it. It's a seaport, and it's just beautiful, beautiful spot.
Yeah,
and, again, it was always, I wanted to see it because my girlfriend.
Yeah.
When I originally wanted to get there, I wanted to go to Mount Harmon, but my bags had got lost, and so I got delayed. So I ended up on Mount Carmel.
Okay.
Right? So that's where the prophet Elijah was at, right? So I spent 10 days fasting and camping in Mount Carmel and just like working out, doing Qigong. And it was fantastic. And just, in the last 4 days, so I'm just going to say, I won't go into the story of too much detail, but basically I was kind of getting mad at God, really, if you want to. I started yelling and screaming at a couple things about day 5 or 6. And then I had a hailstorm.
Day 5 or 6 fasting.
Hailstorm and snow and everything else. I got my answer, right?
Yeah.
It hit back, and it was just like, patience, right? It's the greatest story ever told, right? The why doesn't always come, right? We just follow the rules, we follow the laws, we follow everything else. Why do we follow our guy, right? When there's 33 million gods, just say in India.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why we do this, if you look through the records, is because our guy's the only one that's never screwed us over, right? He's the only one.
He's turning the heat on.
Yeah, he's the only one that did not screw us over. Everybody else has. Like, if you look at the goddess Ishtar and all these different things they put on the humanity was horrible. But the one we would say is Yahweh, or Hashem. So he's the creator, the provider, and the destroyer. But when he incarnates, he always incarnates as what we call as the destroyer. And that's in the Sikh religion, that's in Hindu religion, these are all commons, right? Because we say in Hebrew, or the Judaic religions, Abraham and Sarah, right?
Yeah.
In Hindi, it's Brahma and Saraswati. So this is the line of Shul, right? So it comes down to Lamech, Noah's father.
Yep.
Right, who's also Brihaspataye, but in the Hindu story, the moon had an affair with Brihaspataye's wife, right? So there's these very similar stories. So a lot of the stories again is these metaphors, right? These symbolic metaphors, and they're hidden that way purposely because language changes, but symbols don't, right?
Yes.
So we take Ganesha's head, the elephant head on the little boy. What are they trying to tell us there, right? When you turn that head upside down, it tells you about the brain stem, right? Because what happened, to control Shiva's anger, whatever that ancestor was at the time, you have to control the brain stem first, right? We control it through breathing, control it through mindset, control it through what we have, right? To slow down our sympathetic nervous systems and stuff. And you can actually take it over. And Wim Hof has talked about this. Right?
Yes.
This body is a supercomputer, right? We have super things. Like people tell me all the time, man, you do super stuff. I'm like, no, I'm just using my body in a different way, right? You have more apps on your hands than you have on this phone. You know, this creation piece is amazing once you actually, this is what I'm saying, like New Age, I want to be one with the universe. You learn to be one with yourself first, right? This is the study science of yoga. This is the study of spirituality, right? Yoga's more of a practice, right? That could be applied to. So one of my great teachers is Lahiri Messiah, right? So he was about 100 years ago now, and he was a captain engineer and retired, and then taught yoga, right? So to the Muslims, he was somebody, and he taught them, he prayed 5 times a day. To the Christians, he made them pray 4 times a day. To the Buddhists, again, it's the one truth that we cover with our had, but our religions just define ourselves, right? We're not supposed to kill or fight each other, right? That's the whole principle of that. We should be able to have these discussions. One of the reasons I'm talking about free speech, right? So I had this talk with the guys like, well, what do you think of free speech? I'm like, we need to let people speak. Because I want to know what they're saying. If we don't let them speak, they're still going to think it. You could challenge an idea, right? This is how stuff comes up where all of a sudden I'm hearing online that the Jewish people did child's blood in their Passover bread, right?
Yeah.
And like that was, to me, that's pretty upsetting when we see something like this. For us, it's a trigger, obviously, right? Is what it is. But since I've been back, I did a sweat lodge right away.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, well, when I was there, I was talking to people, like, really with issues, right? So I talk about the heart journey. I talk about a lot of the First Nation stuff, right?
Yeah.
And again, that's why people that know me, they call me the Wandering Jew, because I'm like the Wandering Jew, because I'm always walking around, and they know me as Jewish, right? Other people know me as Catholic on the outer side of things. It's just one of those things, right? You know me as a shaman, right?
Yeah.
And I live in different ways too, right? Because I wear a lot of camouflage, really, right? So what's camouflage? Camouflage could be a red hat saying, "Hey, go Donald Trump." Do I like Donald Trump? Listen, he's done a lot of good things, right? But he's got a lot of baggage, and I'd like to see him go away.
You got a lot of Donald Trump hand movements right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's time for him to move on. Go have fun, play some golf, right? Deal with
go
what
in a
we got.
hotel.
But I'm a very big fan of Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yeah.
Right? Because what I see is Donald Trump, he's attached to Netanyahu and all that kind of stuff, and then trying to bring out this new kind of messiah and all that kind of stuff and control the world. And you're going to get this, like, fascism, really, right? Let's get rid of that, right? But a lot of the ideas are good, right? Because Hitler, uses all these good ideas and then does all the evil. That's kind of like what's happening there. So let's get rid of that. And not to compare him to Hitler, he's not that bad, but like that whole mentality can be very bad. So I like the Vivek Ramaswamy, right? That's over here. People are like, why not DeSantis? Well, DeSantis too, right? So Donald Trump is the Jewish lobby, DeSantis is the Catholic lobby. I'm Jewish and Catholic, right? So it's that mix of two. But what's the difference? So let's not. It's the same old, right? And DeSantis used to torture people in Gitmo. Right, so it is what you want. Like, nobody's gonna be perfect, though, right? I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. That's how it is, right?
No more Captain America.
No. So going back to my point, one of the biggest things that come out of this trip was my greatest experience was when I stayed at hostels, right? And our daughters, man, we got to do this for them. I'll pay for them to go to Israel. Talk about this, and it's just it was so safe. I know it's all in the news. It was so safe everywhere. Yeah, and I barely saw homeless people. I was really wondering. I started to freak out. I was like, "There's like no homeless here." There was a few. Now I went through I was like,
another case of her fucking media lying to us, folks.
Yeah. I saw. It's more dangerous to look
at Vancouver.
I was so I didn't see any riots.
There was that whole news about them hating Christianity.
No. Okay. So what had happened is they didn't want people going up into. Oh yeah, we got to make a move here. Sorry. You're right. You get to go first.
Oh, I was gonna actually do it for you. I won last game.
But yeah, like, what a beautiful country, man. Like,
well, you're doing that.
So I did the north side. I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna hike the south side next time, right? Probably in a few years. But like hostels. So I did this like years ago when I was in. I'm gonna try something different this time. You got me last time. But So when I traveled, like when I was in Bosnia, we went through Europe and we stayed in hostels and did all that kind of stuff. And what a great way to meet people. And so after the 10 or 11 days, so it was 11 days, 10 nights in the mountain. Then I came down to Haifa and I walked down into it. And I walked down through the city. What a beautiful city. And I stayed at this hostel called the Haifa Hostel down there. And it's just got a patio and people with guitars. And actually guys had weed, so it was cool. And I met a guy from Argentina and met a whole bunch of people. 2 Russians, 2 Ukrainians, and then we started playing
Chess?
No, actually, I put on. We all started playing music. It was like not all of us could talk. So there was the Russian fella, there was the two Ukrainians, there was Chiva here, who was Sri Lankan but Canadian, right? Because Canada is just a country of new immigrants, anyways. It really is. And then over here is I can't remember his name, but he's from Africa, Argentina, but the whole world, man. And we're just playing and singing that universal music again, right?
Yeah,
like, unbelievable. And that's like again, you can see the politics, the money, and the push of this military. So I really don't. I don't sit there and say, "Oh, Obama's evil," or "Trump's evil," or "This guy's evil." Right? They're part of a system that we built. The real beast is this military-industrial complex, this system we've built. Right? When we go back to the original formation of the government, it was just supposed to be the three systems, right?
Yeah.
That balance, and we need to go back to that republic. When I was talking with the elders here, and the natives were talking to me, because
in Canada we need to make it a republic.
Yeah, well, I have this weird wacko idea that Steph says you're just crazy, but I was talking to the elders about this, and I said, listen, because they have problems on their own reserves, because in there they're authoritarian and they just do things as they like. It's autocratic on the reserve, right? And I'm like, yeah, you guys got to set yourselves up as republics too. And she said, well, what's your plan with us? I said, well, see, my plan is that we're going to give Canada back to the First Nations entirely, and then you could free us from the maritime law and give us back and free us from being chattel.
Yes.
And they could.
Yeah.
Right? So Kevin Arnett's about this in Ottawa, and Steph's like, well, I don't know. Like, what do you mean? We give all the power to them and then they free us? I'm like, yeah. I go, it's a thing of trust, but it would work. And she's like, I don't know if I can handle that. Because it's the power dime switch. So I'm like, no, we give them back this country, and to us, they free us as the chattel from the birth certificate you got, right? Like all the maritime law and everything else. So, anyways, I don't know. It's a theory I have, and I think it could work. But I'm trying to base off of. There's about 5. I did a lot of First Nations awareness training when I was in the military. There's about 5 reservations I've heard of in British Columbia that have kind of come off the proverbial tit of the government sort of thing and took back their power, and I think have become republics and that are doing very successful, right?
Okay.
So as we rebuild, this is a new model. But this has a chance to turn the tables totally around and switch it. But, we'll see. People aren't necessarily comfortable with that. Yeah, so I'm gonna do the southern half, man. But I was in the northern half. So here's Tel Aviv, where you land in at Ben Gurion Airport, right?
Yeah.
And everything's fairly close, but not close enough. Like Haifa, it takes about an hour and a half of the cab ride to get there that night, and I got in. But then I just walked up the mountain. It was about 25 kilometers to get up there. I just humped up. I'm pretty good at that. I'm sore. That's why it took a couple while because I have all my injuries and stuff. But Jim Top just walked across Canada. That's thousands of miles. Yeah, that's amazing, right? I figured I could do Israel, or at least the northern half, and walk around that part of it, right?
Yeah.
So it was great. What you really want to do is, so I got to Nazareth too. Nazareth's mostly a Muslim town now. But again, the people are very friendly and a great place. There's an Abraham hostel there too.
Yeah.
You just a great place to stay is there. And then Tiberias and Sustita Beach on the Lake of Galilee, Sea of Galilee, is fresh water.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting it. In the movies, I was always thinking like desert and lake, but you went there, it's just so green and lush, and it was just like a lake that you would see here, and what a beautiful spot. And then in Tel Aviv is basically New York or Toronto, right? It's just, that's where everybody goes to party and raves and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't really do much there. And then Jerusalem itself is just that ancient city.
Yeah.
Everybody's there praying, and we sit there. I actually found some graves at a Scottish church, right? It was from the first temple period, just ancient things that I was kind of sitting back. It was just such a beautiful, powerful kind of thing.
What was it like to sit in that energy while you were there? Because I know you're one that's very tuned into the energy, and you know how to feel things that aren't really necessarily
I'm
you.
just going to speak it, I feel that wherever in the world we have a connection to Hashem, connection to God, connection to Spirit, whichever way you want to look at that. But I felt there it was more powerful, and I think it's just because everybody's energizing and stuff. I was joking with the fellow Jews and Christians. I go, because there's no roaming charges, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So we're in a local call zone, but the roaming charges weren't there. But yeah, no, that's yeah, our daughters, man. Like that would be great for them to go, like really, really perfectly safe. I kept shaking so many babies, man. The army guys.
You were shaking babies.
Yeah, well, babies. I started calling that, right? One of my good mentors always said, call people what you want them to be. So the young men and the young women of the Israeli Defense Services, right?
Okay.
And you know, I see them on the train everywhere, just shaking their hand.
Yeah.
They help me out a lot. And just honest, like just, you know, but they're just so young looking. I forget how old we get, right? Like they look like our kids. But my son in Germany, right? He's 17, so he's going to be serving German army. Hopefully he becomes a Fallschirmjäger. You know, if this coming war with Russia happens more, I'm hoping it's not going to, right? See, when I lived in Germany, they always said, it's not if Russia will invade, it's when they're going to invade. They knew this was coming, right? Like, Russia always invades. That's what they do. And they just cut down their people, and that's going on. Russia, however, was trying to use Clausewitz kind of technology here, right? So our sort of politics, and just wanted to go in just the tip.
Yeah.
You never go in just the tip, right? So it's escalated.
You try.
So they have part of the fault in this too, right?
Yeah.
They thought the West is just too stubborn to negotiate. But what people don't really understand, that it's a sideshow. Russia and Ukraine. So Russia is a proxy of who? China. Ukraine is a proxy of NATO. The whole show right now is Taiwan and what's going on there. And what the chips and the cards and everything else and all that issue over there. The military industrial complex is already done with the people of Ukraine.
Yeah.
And that's what the thing is. It's not that I was ever against the war. I was against them using people for this kind of political. And they always say you have to fight them there, but like, do we really have to fight them at all? It's always we got money for bombs. Always we got money for this. You see the same messages again, right?
Yeah.
So if we don't see righteousness, we don't see righteousness with what's going on in the courts with different people, different political views, all that kind of stuff. So when there's no righteousness, there's no contentment. When there's no contentment, you have chaos in society, right?
Yeah.
So righteousness is dharma, right? Doing the right thing when nobody's looking, really, is all I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Doing the right thing, doing your best, as the Buddha would say, right?
Yeah.
You do the right behavior, that leads to contentment in your own life, in your family's life, because they look up to us, right?
Yeah.
What the kids do, because these aren't even all our kids. We're always taking care of them all, aren't we, right? So they look up to us.
Someone's going to do it.
Yeah, well, somebody's got to, right? Because that's right action when nobody's looking. We just do that, right?
Yeah.
I love you for it. One of the reasons why I like that, right? Like it's honorable. So we take that right action. That right action leads to contentment. From contentment flows compassion for others. Right? If there's no righteousness, there's no justice, there's no contentment. Without contentment, there's no compassion for others in society, right?
Yeah.
We need compassion for others. We need to learn to also have our beliefs, right? I have some pretty hardcore conservative beliefs in some things and hardcore liberal beliefs that people be like, wow, man. Yeah, but those are my beliefs, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not trying to fix the world to fit my beliefs. Instead, I fix myself to fit in the world, right? So like when I was flying home, I had a lady that sat next to me, right? She was double the size of the chair. She's mask wearing, right? That I normally make fun of, and purple hair, right? Like somebody totally opposite of who I am. But I'm honestly nice and good, right? Like we should be able to get
still
along.
Still got to treat them with dignity.
Exactly, right? You know, it's like I've never mind.
Their perception is what keeps them in their life.
Gender affirming care for young people.
Call.
I don't mind gender affirming care, right? It gets up to a point that what I don't like is the medical transitioning care for young people, right? So saying if somebody has a gender dysphoria or whatever it is, and they're like, I'm a girl and I want to dress that way, that's fine. But I'm against, say, puberty blockers for, like, if you want to be in a dress, that's fine. You can pretend that, but I'm not going to give you the puberty blockers or the transitions until you're 18, right?
You want to fucking do that.
But if you want to...
Well, see, I'm not even into that because to me that's just a science experiment of men trying to play God.
Yeah, there's always this is the whole thing. That's the original story of Adam. This is what I'm saying.
But then again, people want to cut the fucking own pieces off. That's their own.
Once they're adults, right?
Yeah,
This is what I'm saying, right? Don't touch
stay
the
away from
kids.
the kids.
Don't hurt people, right?
Yeah.
I'm very libertarian. I'm very right. So when we look at perspective of hell and heavens and stuff like that, I like to break it down into more of a Buddhist thing and Nikola Tesla, an Indian thing, and tell you about frequency.
Yeah.
So in our heart is a magnetic frequency, and whatever you're at, that's why we say, like, there was just the Wesak moon last night, the Buddhist moon, so I was doing Om Mane Padme Hum, Om Mane Padme Hum, Om. I bow to the jewel of my heart, right? Like that connection, yeah, that magnetism that we are, right? So this frequency of whatever you are, whatever emotional state you're in, when you die, right, could only match a frequency of that equal dimension of that you're currently in. So if you're in a loving, happy frequency when you leave your body, you'll read different, what we call Buddhic fields, right? So in the physical realms, there's 11 physical realms. The lowest 4 are what we consider hellish or grim realms, right? With ghosts or whatever, or suffering, right? So if I was in a state where I was suicidal and I kill myself and I leave in that state, I need a body to change my frequency. Well, guess what I'm going to match up? I'm going to match up with one of these 4 lower frequencies of Buddhic fields, and I'm going to live a life there. Yeah. Whatever that looks like, right? As maybe an animal, maybe as a rock, maybe as a tree, maybe as a ghost, maybe as whatever that is. And these are the 4 lower realms. The next is 5 to 11. 7 realms are physical realms. Yeah. And Earth is in there, right? And this is nothing, this is just generally, these are Buddhic physical realms, and they go from, you know, it could be a heavenly experience here, it could be a hellish experience here. And they get up better and good. Above that is what we call the Devaconic and Asura realms, and these are like more of an energetic realms. You hear about the blue orbs and stuff like that. These are where these people live. And then the highest realms are in the 4 directions. The realm I pray to is what we call, would be the Christian version of Buddhism, really, which is the land of Sukhavati. Right? So it's pure Western Buddhist land. So only the highest beings go there, because the Buddha that lives there is the highest form of the being, but he lives in the West. Yeah. Right? Okay. So when we say his name even 6 times, if you haven't killed your father, or killed your mother, or had done anything really horrible, you can kill others, right? It's not, but father and mother is one of his big things, and haven't been really overly super bad. You know what he'll do for you. The idea in that Western Pure Land Buddhism, by his name chanting, kind of like Jesus. He'll let you live there with him for an incarnation, and then when he sends you back to Earth, you'll be here in a higher evolved state so that you can help. Because the purpose of us all here is to raise the state up. Because Earth is a place of suffering, right? It's in the demiurge, right? So the chakra system stops here at the crucifixion chakra or the throat chakra. This is where Krishna sits, or the angel Samael, or all that stuff, Saint Michael, all that kind of the Yahweh ball kind of energy. Right? And everybody, and Buddha never wanted to go to heaven, right? Like that wasn't, to go to heaven is to pass that chakra. Buddha said, let's stay in here. And just keep recycling and helping everybody else, right? Jesus. But Jesus, he really wanted to give something different, right? So his part of his dharma is what we call the mystery at Golgotha. And with his crucifixion and sacrifice and what he was able to do and get through, he created, because after Krishna had died, right, he said, look, there's no way to get to heaven except through me, right? You're going to be judged, you're going to be this. It's not going to work out well for you, right? So just say, Hare Krishna, go through it, and best of luck, right? Deal with it. So, so Jesus, you know, through his path, right, he created this doorway, right, to the third eye, which is the mother's, or the Kalbarov chakra, right? And so, but raising up through the divine feminine. So remember, Jesus starts as Ganesha, right? And then he ends up here as Jesus, the Christed one that raises up, the anointed one. The Christ consciousness. The highest level of Buddha, the Buddhaya, the Sukhavati, the Western Pure Buddha, the Sada Shiva, the one that doesn't incarnate. Because if he did, just his light alone on him would destroy everything in this universe, right? Because he's much bigger than you could even imagine, right? Like it's not. But he does incarnate in a form. There is forms that do incarnate, right? That's why there's 1,000 Shivas, there's 1,000. They're called roops, or they're called like messengers, right? They're not gods. We worship them as gods, and we shouldn't do that, right? They're the essence of higher beings, or what's called Mahasattvayas, great beings, right? So when you go to the Jewish Kabbalah, what was that all about originally? It was about dealing with these higher beings, because we had to, or they'll destroy you, right? So it's like, okay, we do this, or we're dead, right? Like that, really, it was like that.
That's how easy it is for us to die.
It is that is, right? So there is kind of that respect that has to be built up throughout these universes and stuff.
Yeah.
In First Nations, I love the story when they tell about, and I share a lot of First Nation stories when I was in Israel. You sat with Creator for many years before he sent you here, right? So the really deep meditation I had last night in the full moon is that our body, physical body, is full of minerals, water, all this kind of stuff. It belongs to the earth. You don't leave it, right?
Yeah.
Your brain is the artificial intelligence for the Akashic records, the trees, the earth, everything else. So if you just live in your brain, you want to live in your senses, and you'll be like a tree and sexual, whatever. Do as you wish. Like there's no judgment. That's your karma, right? You'll end up in your Buddhic field where you're going to end up, man. That's on you, right? I don't want to
free will.
That's it, right?
That's what we were given when we
you're
came.
given.
Free
You do
will.
what you wish, right?
Yeah.
There's ways to get out here. So Jesus is a way of bhakti, right? Buddha is a way to get better lives, but he's not going to get you up into heaven, right? Like he even said that. He goes, no, you're going to keep working here with me. So there's all these different things, right? You just got to listen to it, but you have that choice, right? But you should be doing the right thing. You should be doing righteous. Yeah. Righteousness comes from kindness, generosity, charity, chastity, right? But not prudeness, right? But just don't be so lustful. So, it's just such an exciting thing. It was so exciting to share ideas. Talk to people with the heart journey, because people ask me why I use mushrooms, magic mushrooms. One of the things I found is, so I've told you this journey before, is I started here in life as you're born as a baby, right? So you're kind of like, you're in a pure form, you don't hate anybody, you don't know anything, you're just like observing the world beautifully.
Yeah.
But as you grow, you kind of walk up and your parents say, don't like this person, or don't like these people, or believe this only, or do this. And as you walk through your life, you walk farther and farther away from that baby, so far away from that innocence. And then when you get our age, 40 and 50, even with your ex-wife, you look back at yourself and you don't even recognize yourself anymore. Because you become something entirely different, right?
And I'm coming up on 42, so I'm on the edge of another 7-year cycle, so I'm a completely different person at the end.
But at some point, this is what we talk about walking the red road, is when you turn back around, Brian. You start walking back to that baby. And so every point in your life when there was something traumatic, even your current breakups, everything that happens, the belief is that a piece of our soul goes whack, right? And it will leave us. And it's like, I'm out of here. I don't want anything to do with your shitty life anymore, right? I didn't come for this. So when we walk back, we connect those pieces of the soul, right?
Yeah.
Some of them are harder to connect, and you could just do it through sweat lodge and everything else. For me, I think some with the brain damage and some of the things I've dealt with, that's where I've used the mushrooms on a medium dose, right? I don't like these hero doses or anything else. And I was able to...
You go at a gentleman's pace.
Yes, exactly. But enough to be able to reconnect. So, like, there was instance... I got
we'll turn the light on for
I know. I got a really bad fight with my father when I was 17. Ended up on the streets for a bit. And I was having a really bad time dealing with that or even remembering that. So I used some of the mushrooms to go back and the psychedelics to really kind of get into my personality and see that, right? So, but yeah... No, but again, that's not something
just walk through
you
like a
can abuse
normal
all the
person.
time.
Don't be a dummy.
Yeah, it's something you can't abuse all the time. Either,
Sorry,
right? No, it's fine.
This is my brother, by the way.
Derek, yeah.
So, me and him have a special relationship, and sometimes we just like to tell each other we're fucking assholes.
That's what brothers are for, right?
Yeah.
But Israel itself, like I like to say, it is the country of brotherly love. Everybody there was super friendly.
Yeah.
They're not weak right now. They're very strong, right?
Like very united.
Very united, right? They really are under this. It's a brotherly
Not
fight.
like here where everybody seems to be divided.
Yes, they're ready to
but
fight. But
we're oddly united too when the right thing happens. Don't think
they're weak at all, right?
Yeah,
They're 100% to go. Right now it's just issues because it's like there was this old school, what I call want to build the walls of Jericho again and just like have this old kind of religious fascist, or there's a guy like Benny Gantz who's going to come out and say no. Because these guys want the end of the world, and they want the red cow, and they want everybody to fight each other, and they want, no, right? So we need a more liberal kind of thing, which goes back to Yitzhak Rabin. But don't think it's not, like, they're very strong right now, right?
So here's my question.
Yeah.
We live in Canada.
Yeah.
What are we going to do here? Because we very obviously cannot trust what's going on with who we have right now.
No,
and what do we have coming in that's trustworthy?
So, from what I've heard on the pipeline of coming in is that Texas and 27 other states have currently applied to join BRICS. And so and Canada has applied to join the new federation that's going to be under Texas.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so these are some things that are kind of going on behind the scenes. But as I said, right, that's a
That's a completely different answer to a completely different question I had then.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it goes different, right? So there's about 27 under Texas right now will be the new capital of what I'm reading, in 27 countries, man.
Just walk through normally.
All right. Yeah, we'll be.
Treat it like a normal day. It's just a camera.
27 of the states are planning to join the BRICS Union, and Canada has looked at wanting to join the BRICS Union as well. So our future will be secure with that, right? It's we shouldn't look at NATO's going to be relooked at. Things are going to be moved around. I mean, you're going to see King William come in. He's been misjudged. He's actually really it's one of those princes that really he doesn't have any dirt on him. Prince Harry just tried to recently kill him with a bomb.
Really?
Yeah. Anyways.
Okay.
Let's not even get into that. But the point is, King William will become King William. I know this is coronation of the week, but he'll become the king, and his castle's going to be in Israel, actually, right? Because that's, as I said, there is some kind of conditions that happen that way. But yeah. But yeah, that's basically. So there's a lot of little plays over the sea, and people aren't really ready that what. Yeah, no, William are good people.
Are they coronating Charles right now?
Yeah, rumor has it he might already be, but it's
I've heard
all
that
CGI,
too.
right?
Yeah.
And these things have to build up, and as I said, right, greatest story ever told, but there's patience to the story, right? There's always patience to the story, and it's going to be another 20 years of this unfolding. And then, when all the nans have passed on and all the good, then we'll kind of tell what's going on. Because we don't need them to all drop dead, thinking, oh my God.
Heart attack.
Yeah, what happened, and things like that, right? So there's sensitivity to this, right? But there is good people in the world, and the Illuminati don't control the whole world. I love that show Inside Job, right? The cartoon, it's pretty funny on Netflix because they go to the reptilian. It's pretty funny because they go to the reptilian convention, right? And the reptilians are like, next year we will rule the world, and it's like they say that every year, and it's true, right? People don't understand that these are factions. This is not going to happen. There's elders that run.
And I will rule the world, and that's what the answer.
That's it. I mean, Klaus Schwab, right? He's wearing a tunic. It's one thing I can teach anybody anything, and I tell it to my kids: you never trust a man in a tunic. You can live by that. Never trust a man in a tunic.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's so the Catholic Church is being cleaned out, and it will be revamped, right? Because again, I don't believe in throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? It's a different way to worship. It's a bhakti way to worship. Right?
Yeah.
So all these religions are our coats that we wear, and it's a different way to worship, right? The truth is under the hat because it's all one truth.
Yeah.
But people like to have that because there's customs, there's ancestors. So let's talk about ancestral DNA. So one of the things I do when I hike is that in the back of your legs, supercomputer, right? So if you hike for hours, do squats or do anything heavy, you end up using waking up ancestral memories from your DNA itself, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times this is what we call samskarma, or your families, because you travel in this group of 7. I don't want to really get into it, but a lot of people think they have all these past lives. That's not true, right? You're remembering your ancestors' memories from your DNA that you've opened up in the back of your legs, right? Reincarnation to give you
message.
A theosophy. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just keep moving.
Reincarnation to get the theosophy thing works like this. It's basically every age, which is about 2,500 years, let's just say, give or take, right? You get to be born once as a man and once as a woman, right? Upon your death, your spirit goes back to Venus, and there's 4 different stages you could go through there for something.
Yeah.
Right? And this is like in the occult secrets and everything else. The body goes back to the earth. Your mind itself is the sixth sheath, right? That has to be conquered, that Jesus will talk through your walk through hell, through your journey. There will be a bit of a walk when you die, right? People know this in the Hindis, that's why they used to have 9 days and 12-day celebrations and stuff like this, right? And they do the cycle pump, is what it's called here at First Nations, right? Doing work for the afterlife. Just because the body's gone doesn't mean you're necessarily gone right away, right?
Yeah,
Spirits around, things are happening. So we do these procedures for people and this cleansing and all this kind of stuff, right? So there's all this stuff that needs to happen. But what are people ready to hear yet? Well, if they've been slaves for the last 6,000 years, and they think this is the way it is, and they think God is this way, right? And they think, I could do 1,000 sweat lodges, or I could do 1,000 pilgrimages, or, you can chant God's name for 10,000 years, but if it's not once done with love,
yeah,
it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, it really doesn't. He's not going to listen to you, man.
Remember that.
That's
gotta be done with love.
It's got to be done with love. There's no love.
There's no way. There's no other way.
That's the key, right? That's the key. Even when you're fighting demons, what I try to tell people, right? You got to destroy them with love. You become the sword, but it's through love, right? Because there's inside everybody, even a demon, there's still that spark, right? Otherwise, God would just destroy them, right? But there's in His plan, He likes to teach us through history. If you look every time, it's like a story of redemption. And it's a history of learning and a history of learning. Mankind's always a history of learning and a history of learning and a history of learning. So, again, we'll say Hashem, we say Great Spirit, Allah, Sada Shiva, the one who doesn't incarnate, the grandfather, son, spirit, like the highest levels of things, right? So, the creator of the creation that we're in, right? So, and that multiverse. I like that. Hindus have a good one in Sanskrit too. What's it called? We call it the Mahavishnu, right? So, which is a Vishnu, Vishnu, the force that pervades, like almost Jedi, right? The force. Mahavishnu, right? The multi-force, or the multi-universe, right? The layers, right? And again, these are all different energy fields that are in frequencies, right? From the lowest being hellish, very physical realms, to different higher realms that are very faint and everything else, but very pleasurable realms, right?
Yeah.
So from very grim to pleasurable, and then grim just being because it's in a certain frequency, right? It's not going to be a pleasant experience if you're in...
It's just a lower vibration.
So this body that you're gifted, one as a man and one as a woman, every 2,500 years you get two goes at this, right?
Yeah.
So... That's the only thing that will ever change your spirit in that sense. I forgot to bring a puppet tonight.
Now, here's a question, and you saying that. You get one as a man and one as a woman.
Yeah.
Now, could that also be interpreted as a twin flame in that context, or is that something a little bit more different?
Oh, possibly and possibly not, right? Because the term twin flame and even the soul term
and let's
overused.
We're not going New Age twin flame shit.
Yeah,
No, we're talking actual.
I almost want to just call it life, right?
Yeah.
Because what is this creation? So let's look at creation itself, and what I've discovered, anyways. I'm not one to talk, right? Because I don't really know things, but I have some ideas.
Well, so, everybody can have.
Pythagoras said, "Everything is moving, so therefore everything must be sound." Right? In all the ancient stories I've heard, it always starts with the word, the sound of creation, right? So let's look at that sound again. I've shared this before. The sound of creation is ah, or like ah. Yeah, you're creating all right, right?
Ah.
Yeah, right? That's it. That's how you impregnate your wife. Ah. Right? That's what's happening. Ah, it's a creation. It's the sound of creation. And so then the second word is, or the second part of the word, that the whole basis of creation is built off, is what holds everything together, which is the maintainer or the provider, which is love, right? And what's that sound? So when you have a newborn baby, they say what? They go, coo, ooh. It's like a love, right? Like a ooh. And then third part of the sound is destructive force, right? Which is So this is the word. This is the word of creation. This is the sound of creation. So in that creation, Aum. So Aum, the three, the Trinity, that word, right? That tree, right? And that's really, so when I say afterwards, I'll say Om Namo Ratna Trayaya. I bow to the three words of creation, right? I pay homage to.
Okay.
Namo Sarya Agara, the sea of celestial wisdom, right? So Buddhism is really drawing in the fields and all that kind of stuff, right? So there's different paths of yoga. What Jesus did, because when, like, we got to look at, again, when we go back to Yahshua, when he was born, 3 wise men walked all the way from India and Nepal or wherever. They didn't just leave, right? They gave him frankincense, myrrh, that, and then they taught him, and then he went back with them when he was 14 years old until he was 27, and then came back, and there's records of all that, or maybe 29, right? Came back. When he stormed the temple, right? People don't understand. So in the Talmud, so people are familiar with the Torah, which is the Jewish Bible, but the Talmud is a book of information, right? So we study the Talmud. It takes us 7.5 years to read it all. So these lessons that were given to us, it's not just the laws, the 10 commandments, it's all that stuff on how to live healthily. It takes 7.5 years to read, right? It has instructions on it, how to, like, remove bird eggs from a bird nest, what time of season, how to hunt, how to do this stuff. It's all the health, right? So that's why it said only eat fish with fins and scales. Don't eat the crustaceans. Don't eat this stuff because it's high in cholesterol. It's high in things, right? Only eat the kosher meat you've killed from your hand and you've inspected yourself, right?
Okay.
Just don't eat wild meat everywhere, right? And you'll have your health. So, because if you look before the flood in the ancient teachings, everybody was a vegetarian, but everybody was living 900 years. After the flood, right? Oh no, it's all right. After the flood,
this is my TV.
Yeah. After the flood, we were allowed to eat meat, but only with a certain kind of rules to it, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine, and that's just for health reasons, right?
Yeah.
It's just that kind of stuff that goes on. But following these laws and following these ordinances and everything else gave people the power. They had all this kind of beauty, right? So when the British Empire followed the laws and ordinances, they conquered the world. And when they turned in on themselves, they fell apart. The United States started out 1776, laws and ordinances. 50 years later, Babylon took over. They already fell. The Liberty Bell cracks. And now you can see the repercussions, right, of what it is. Because capitalism is going to create wealth gaps. Socialism is going to be government destroying against the competition in business, right? Communism, control of all the means of production through death, through violence, all that kind of stuff. Divine law, right? So in divine law, so when King Solomon built his temple, he hired 30,000 workers. And each worker would go work for 1 month and then have 2 months off. So they'd only work 4 months out of that year, but they'd have enough money for the year. He was trying to show you people shouldn't work that hard, right? That should be a normal work week, You should only work 4 months out of the year or 5 months out of the year. You shouldn't be working so much. You should be working on your house and your family and stuff. That's all in divine law, right? Every 7th year, your corporation, your business, your country is supposed to give you a full year off with full pay. You see what I mean? That is in divine law, so you could better yourself and everything else. That's how a real free society works. Every 7th year, you're to be off. Every 50th year, you're supposed to gather the country together and reread the laws and make sure everybody knows it, all the foreigners in there and stuff. And the states didn't do any of that stuff, so the bell cracked, right? 7th year is off, right? Just like the 7th day is holy. It doesn't matter what day, but you should take 1 day off a week. Yeah. Explain this to people. If I was on one side of the world and we met here, right? So, and I said, I'm walking west, you walk east, and we meet each other. By the time we get to each other on the other side of the world, we'll be 2 days apart anyways. Yeah. It doesn't really matter. It's the merit of the law again, right? So it's taking 1 day for rest, right? So I start mine at Friday at sundown until Saturday when I came here today, right? Yeah. And it's not a full rest. You can still do some things, but just really take time for yourself. Time for...
Just relax,
It's not always meditation, right? So Thomas Keating, Catholic writer, The Way of Christian Contemplation, right? He's a fantastic, right? And just on forgiveness and on teaching and stuff. This is what I mean about not throwing the whole baby out with the bathwater. There's many good people in the Catholic Church. There's many good rabbis. There's many good people. The majority, I think I was having this talk away, it's like
Most people don't know.
Yeah, when I was a company, yeah, exactly. Even in the Freemasons, right?
Yeah, it's not until you get to like the 30th degree or something.
Even the 33rd degree, right? There's only a few of them too, right?
Yeah.
But it's not everybody. I think King George in 1852 actually tried to bring this up, that there was problems in the Mason laws, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, there's just different groups and different powers and different ideas and people that want to fix the world, right?
Yeah.
It's not your world to fix. So go back to the original story of Adam, who was exiled. Why? Because he was trying to fix the world. So he's the wandering Jew. He was on long exile. He was kicked out of the Garden of Eden because he was trying to mess with everything. He was trying to make AI to make his life easier and everything else instead of trying to live in with the world, right? As God had taught by his laws, by his things, right? He thought he could one up. You know, you see this many times. You see this in this, and again, the gods of Egypt, right? God's Set, right? Like he's building temples and all these high things, right? Because it's part of the issue I have with the Vatican, right? It's because like they built this beautiful thing, right? I forget Pope Pius the First, maybe. I won't quote it, but he had Michelangelo paint the thing and everything else, right? So he had it all. It was all good. Everybody's coming to get there, right? And he went to sleep that night, and he had a dream. Jesus appeared in his dream and said, "Hi, how's it going? I love what you've done with the place, but I'm not going to be here at your opening. I got to go to Paulie's church on the other side of town." And the Pope woke up from this dream, and he was so frustrated. He's like, "Who's Paulie? Like, I've done all this stuff. We spent this money, the wars, the people we've killed, the people that have died, all the blood, all the stuff that's gone into this. Who is this Paulie?" So he puts together his guard, and they want to go find Paulie. So they're driving around town, or not driving, riding the horses and the carts, and they get to this far part of town, and there's a little shed on the outside of town, and that's where Paulie lives. So they're kind of surprised, and they're like, "What?" So they get over to where Paulie is, and they're like, "Hey, are you Paulie?" And so this old guy comes out, and he looks up, and he's like, "Oh boy," he drops to the ground, right?
Yeah.
And the Pope's like, no, stand up. "If you're Paulie, I'm looking for the church you built, because I had a dream last night that Jesus was coming to see your church and not the Vatican and not ours." And Paulie said, "Well, I'm sorry, Your Eminence, I'm sorry." But he goes, "I had a dream too that Jesus last night." He goes, "But my church, this is it." He goes, "I don't have much. I just have this shed and I have my Bible." He goes, "Every night I study my Bible and then I contemplate. And inside my mind, I've built an entire temple, an entire church that's inside my heart. And I've been doing this for 30 years. And he said, Eminence, last night I put the final stone in. And then I had a vision that Jesus said he was coming to my church tonight." So that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not the money, it's not the size. Like if you look at the Prophet Muhammad, blessings be upon him, right? He was very poor and he was illiterate. He never wrote anything down. But if you want his true teachings, you get in the people of the bench. One of his teachings was he'd always pray. It's called a dua. He'd pray that, "Please keep me among the poor. Keep me among the ordinary people. This is where the righteous people live," right? And he always believed the righteous people live first. That's why I love living among ordinary. You know, my gurus in India and stuff have always taught me that too. Be ordinary, right? Live among the ordinary. Be extraordinary. It's by being extraordinary that we become extraordinary, right? Extraordinary is extraordinary, right? By being ordinary, right? Because everybody is a superhuman. Everybody has super abilities. Everybody is special. It really is true, right? But you got to die to yourself. You got to die to that ego and not even know you're special, but not suck it up, sort of thing, right? Keep going here.
Keep leaning out here.
Yeah. How long has it been?
Oh, we've been going for a couple hours now.
Right.
It's fucking 9:25, my friend.
You want to cut it, or?
Well, we can shut her down if you got it. You figured that.
Well, I got to get back to Steph at some point, but yeah, we could cut it down for now and stuff. I think we covered a lot. I don't know. It's up to you.
Well, I'm good to go, man.
Yeah.
Well, fuck. Thanks for popping out, man, and sharing your story. Dropping all those knowledge bombs on me. I fucking love everything.
Well, I just wanted to share. I'm not going to share anything anywhere else, right?
Yeah.
As I said, it's like some of it. This trip was very personal for me because I had people asking me why I was taking pictures and stuff. It was just me going on my own
you're going on a
journey,
pilgrimage,
right?
or a journey,
my own
right?
pilgrimage.
Yeah.
You know, one of the downfalls I had was so I bought a clone phone before I got there. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
So just like $90 down at the pawn shop, and then when you got there, I got the SIM card and I put it in.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when I was there, I couldn't access any of my D.A.W.G banking app or anything else. Because last time when I went to Nepal, I took this phone with me and I called Rogers. I still got roaming charges like $1,800.
Oh, fuck.
I didn't want to deal that with again, right? So
Yeah,
it worked
yeah.
out, but that was the one thing I couldn't have. I was like, I had no access to my banking, so that kind of screwed up a few things. But it got back online.
Yeah,
And stuff. But yeah, man, no, it's great. Thank you for letting me come here to share it. I'm telling you, our daughters will put them on a trip to Israel once they get a little older. This hostel guide's amazing. What an experience, and honestly, what a safe and beautiful country. Barely any of these riots. Again, it shows you how the news is always fake, right? Like it's just like, yeah, I felt safer. Like I'd be more scared to walk around Vancouver these days. Let's just put it that way.
And I keep hearing that, like
Yeah,
Vancouver, Portland, all those places.
yeah, I wouldn't want to go there. Israel's much safer.
Anywhere where the liberals have taught you what.
Yeah, and
I don't have anything against liberal people, but the people in charge of the liberal parties, the Democrat parties, yeah.
I think what's I like to see Betty Gantz get in Israel. Israel go a bit more liberal, go a bit more Yitzhak Rabin, so to speak, and get back to being
Like true.
be back truly. See, democracy I don't believe in. True democracy leads to a golden calf, because if you get the people what they want, they just want crap, right? That's why you need.
We tried that experiment.
Yeah, that's why you need a republic. You need
Yeah.
the three separate parts of a government, right?
So that common sense can prevail.
Yes, exactly. You can't have true democracy. People, you just get.
You can't have mental illness.
What do they
in
want?
charge.
Yeah, that doesn't work, right? So it has
Yeah.
to be the republic, and
Like,
that's. I'd like to see things form. The preamble, of the U.S. Constitution, is one of the most beautifully crafted things, right? You know, and then you look at that, God we trust. Look back at some divine law. And understand, like, it wasn't just, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not this.
Yeah.
There's ordinances, there's judgments, there's way to live your life that's so much different. I mean, imagine the freedom people would have if, okay, a couple things. In taxes, right? You're only allowed to tax a person's income. No property tax, nothing like that. The government itself has to live within the means of its taxes. You know what I mean? Like, it's all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Imagine every seventh day people had off. Imagine every seventh year people had off to better themselves.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
would be such a beautiful society in so many ways. But instead of that, they've taken the Ten Commandments and they use it in a form of control. Because just like anything, right? Like a gun, anything else, I could use it for good or for
They're still
evil.
metaphorically putting a gun to your head and telling you you're
and
gonna.
not telling you the freedom of what God had really intended for you, right? This is the
I'm
unfortunate
gonna
part
whip you because you did
of
something
the
wrong.
illusions, right? So the true masters who wear the hats and know each other, right? The elders of society, whether you're Chinese, whether you're from Africa, whether you're Germanic, whether you're Israel, everybody has their elders, right? And that's what I'm saying. And that part of the world works behind to wake the world up to what's going to come forward, right?
Yeah.
So I'm excited about the future.
I'm excited too.
I'm excited about Elon Musk, things he's got going on. I'm excited about a lot of things, right? So.
Well, we're gonna see what happens.
Oh yeah. No, it's great. It's fantastic. I'm excited. I'm excited for the future for Israel. There's good things happening to them. As much as there has been rise on anti-Semitic, we're on it, right? And we keep our eyes on it, man. But yeah, thanks, brother.
All right, man. Thank you. Thanks for coming out, man.
Oh yeah. As we
Always
say,
a pleasure.
so we say L'chaim.
L'chaim.
L'chaim. That's cheers, man.
All right, metal dad out.
Yeah, it was great, brother.
That was. Thank you.